Right, so we're holding the last few klavim or seifim in the shach, or the dinim of Sfeka, Taaruvot Sifyud. And after that, we'll go into some Yud Aleph, which is the last Siman. I think it was worthwhile. It was a good review of the various dinim, scenarios, possibilities that can arise that may constitute, at times, a suffix or a Sfeka. Sfeka, as we've explained, carries a lot of weight. In wanting to determine if a situation is mutter or not, we sometimes may have certain unknowns, simply unknowns. And that makes it difficult, of course, not only for the balabusta, not only for her husband, sometimes even for the Rav, to be able to determine what do we do with the situation. We have doubts. Things would be clear. We have a Shulchan Aruch, we know what the Halacha is. It's black and white. But sometimes things are not black and white. Sometimes they require investigation, as we will see tonight. And upon investigation, we will glean, I think the word is in English, some additional information that may help us determine the status of what we're looking at. Whether it's the kashrus of an animal, whether if the woman is a Niddah or not. Many, many such cases that come up in Halacha as to what to do. And before we go on to the last three klalim, klal lamed daled lamed hey and lamed vav, perhaps I may not have mentioned it in the past, so I want to say it now. It's very easy to be machmir. That's what the Chachamim say, koach de'eter odif. The strength of being matir is always stronger. If you can demonstrate how something is mutter, you have the upper hand. In other words, it's a big advantage, it's a big plus. Don't look at it as, oh, he's being lenient. No. If you can demonstrate through rayas, through proof, that something is mutter, that is the preferred approach. Imagine a woman, she has a question about a stain. Even if it's not a stain, it was real blood. There are many unknowns. There's several possibilities where this blood came from. It all depends if this is the time when she usually sees blood. All kinds of issues. And they go to ask a rabbi. He thinks he learns the halacha. He learned the halachas. Hey, blood? Oh, chas v'shalom. You're Niddah. He has just separated a husband and wife who could have had a child if they would have been together. But because he prevented it from happening, it's terrible. In the Shemayim, I'm sure they're going to ask him about it. Why did you do that? Well, it was blood. So what? Just because it's blood. There's so many halachas, so many details, so many sfekas that can arise. And the best thing to do when you're unsure is to ask. Ask somebody who's more knowledgeable. There are certain Rabbanim who specialize in certain areas. There were those who specialize in treifas, those who specialize in Mikvaot, Taras HaMishpacha. It's a specialty. You don't find those that specialize in everything. It's a little bit difficult. It's like medicine. It used to be the medical field. You had a doctor who was an all-around doctor. Today you have a doctor just for the ear, just for the nerves, right? Just for feet. I mean, the medical field is so great and vast today. No doctor specializes in everything. Even though we have poskim, Baruch Hashem, in every generation, that's their job, is to be able to look at a situation, a complex situation, and try to figure out what the halacha is based on what has been written before, based on the Gemaras. Right? It's not always easy, because not only is not every situation possibility written down and has happened before, today there's new things that did not exist in the past. Nonetheless, there are things that we can compare it to. So it takes a knowledgeable posek with a very good analytical mind to be able to decipher, what the halacha should be or what it should apply. Then you have a dayan. A dayan, that's an extra specialty. You got to be able to figure out who's the liar. Yeah. I mean, halachas, that's very good. You have to have experience. You have to be able to know a little bit about human psychology, if possible. In order to succeed, all this helps. But more than anything else, more than halachas, more than experience, we all need siyata deshmaya. We need siyata deshmaya that we should not make any mistakes, whether it's us, or the posek, or the Rav, who's determining. If one is very careful, and one does things Hashem Shemayim, then Be'ezras Hashem, he will not make a mistake. There have been...
That presupposes...
No, I'm talking about something else. I'm talking about being nichshel, for example. There were tzaddikim who they smell, like we say in English, they smell the rat. This is not kosher. This can't be kosher, but it's chicken, so what's wrong with it? Call in the maid, and the maid revealed what the problem was. There was some problem. The treif chicken that was supposed to be thrown away got cooked by mistake. The balabosa did not manage to throw it away before she grabbed it and cooked. All kinds of things like that happen. And big tzaddikim were able to detect that. So I'm giving you this little overview, is that, yes, it's easy to be machmir. It's very easy to be machmir, but no. The Chachamim tell us that you have to be careful not to be machmir when there's no need to be machmir. When we have klolim, we have rules. We have rules not only of Sfeka, which we're learning now. There's a rule of when do you apply hefsed meruba. What is a hefsed meruba? You know what a hefsed meruba is? All it means is a big loss. There are actual halachas on what a hefsed meruba is. Is it $10? Is it $100? What about $10,000? Well, it depends. It's for who? When a poor man came with his cow and had a question about this cow, for him that cow was a hefsed meruba. Yes,
no, all I'm trying to say is a person who does not have the expert think, so I should permit myself to eat this. Heter is adif. If I don't have to be matter is adif. It's to be matter.
No.
If I don't have the expertise, I can't be matter anyway.
No, maybe I didn't clarify myself. What I mean is the approach. Only the approach.
Bezat Hashem will protect me. I'm going to just eat it.
No, we're talking about approaches here. The approach, there's an approach to be strict and an approach to be lenient.
By an expert, but the expertise required.
By the one, of course, by the one who has the right, the samchut, the authority to make that determination. Yes. He has a choice. He can be lenient or he can be strict. And there are times when he can be both. It all depends on if it's a hefsed meruba or not. That will determine whether he will be machmir or he will be lenient. But other than that, if it's not so clear cut, you shouldn't rush to just say, well, I don't want to take a chance. It's Safek Doraisa. Yeah, but you may have several Sfekas here. Unless you're dealing, we said before, is Chazek Isura. That's the topic that we've covered before. When something is Chazek Isura, and in other words, you're starting off with an Isser, and you want to release yourself from this Isser, it's a Machlokes HaPoskim. Can you say, Sfeka Kneged HaChazak or not? And then there was a question: what if you have 3 Sfekas? Would that help you get rid of this, of the Chazak? Not necessarily. The Taz said that it doesn't help you no matter how many multiple Sfekas you have. It does not help. So this Chazak Isura was definitely a big area, which we covered just briefly, of how even if you have a Sfeka, which is a powerful tool, it will not necessarily help you if you're beginning with an Isser. You need a lot more proof to undo it. Person is tameh. He goes into the mikvah. He started off as a tameh. We want to undo the tumah. So the question will arise, well, why don't you just jump back in? What's the big deal? Well, the big deal is when a woman made a mistake. I'm not going to mention what mistake it is. It's not important, right? But she made some mistake that the Rav says you may have to go back to be toivel. What if she lives 100 miles away? Do we make her go back and toivel? She toiveled a little. I'll give you an example. It was a little bit too early. It's supposed to be at night, not during the day. Okay, there's all kinds of scenarios where she may be allowed to be toivel right before nighttime. There may be some exceptions to that. What now? Do we make her go back? See what I mean? The question is also by brachas. You ate a sandwich, right? We spoke a little bit about that, and now you went. You finished your sandwich. And you went to take a bus. Oh no, I forgot to bench. You're supposed to bench when you ate the sandwich, not at the bus stop. Do we make you go back? Well, some say yes, go back. Well, what if I need to catch the bus? If I go back, I may miss that bus. I may have to wait a couple hours. That's different. We're lenient. See what I mean? So sometimes we say you can be lenient. Sometimes we're machmir. It all depends on the circumstances. Yes.
These are factual-based issues. Factual considerations.
Yeah.
There are also potentially legally halacha itself has to interpret.
Well, we don't really have that much of a question today on how to interpret the halacha. Baruch Hashem, by now, the Shulchan is Aruch. That's what's called the Shulchan Aruch. The table is set. We have the Meforshim. You may have a machlokes as to which one do we follow. If it's not specifically in the Mechaber the Ramah, then what do? We have Pischei Tshuva, we have the Pri Megadim, various scenarios that are not brought down clearly in the Shulchan Aruch. Yes. So we have machlokes. However, in the end, we have a klal of achri rabbim nehatos. You can always go by the majority, depending on what it is. Sometimes you may have a majority, but you can be soymech or toile lehakel because there's a big posek who says, you know what, you can rely on him. I'll give you a quick example. I just read about the Chafetz Chaim. The Chafetz Chaim's family never allowed anybody to see the kois that he made kiddush on because it was small. They say it was even smaller than what we consider small, as far as the small shiurim are concerned, of how much you have to have. He didn't want people to see it because he didn't want people to learn from that that's what you could use lechatchila. You know, he has his reason. And why did he use a small one? Obviously, back then, wine was very expensive, right? He didn't want to be machmir for others when there was no need to be machmir, when things, were very difficult. And there are some shitas, even though they made it in the minority, that would approve of this. But would he tell you that that's the halacha? No. He would tell you what the halacha really is. But there are situations where you would be able to follow the minority opinion. All right. So anyway, a little bit of what we said last time. The Shach told us a very important klal before we go to the next column, that even though we have this tool that will enable us to determine if something is mutter or not based on Sfeka, when the probabilities are leaning towards one more than the other, when one is more shechiach, more common than the other, more common, that's called probabilities, laws of probability, statistics, whatever you want to say, then that's not a real Sfeka shokul. It's not balanced. There are others who say, well, so what? This suffix is not shokul, but the other suffix is okay. So at least I have one good one. And didn't the Rashba tell us anyway that the whole svoro Sfeka, the way it works, is like roiv? And I have roiv tzdodim lehatir. I have more of a majority of aspects, tzdodim, to be matir. So even if one suffix is a little bit 60%, it's not 50-50, it will be okay. But we don't hold like that. Based on the Shach, we follow pretty much that. I think, I'm not sure in the case of if it's a hefsed meruba or not. Yeah. I think that's basically how we follow the Shach, is that if it's not a suffix shokul, it won't work. Anyway, that was an important klal in the Shach. Klal Lamedalet is another interesting area, and that's called a suffix machmas chisor and yediyah, which you may remember we had that in the Siman Tzadik Ches in the very beginning of Taaruvot. Suffix machmas chisor and yediyah, which we discussed, meant that why do we have a suffix? Because we're not knowledgeable about something, about a particular detail. We don't know. But what? If there's no way to figure out, not necessarily. There may be a way to figure out. Sometimes yes, sometimes not. But that's what suffix machmas chisor and yediyah means, that this particular suffix is not in the metzias. What happened? That's metzias. It's a suffix in a halacha. In other words, or we will see, that's one type of suffix, an halacha, or a suffix as to what exactly or how much is there here? Was there 60 or not? Okay, which is that's more of a suffix in the metzias, but I'm not calling it a suffix in the metzias. It's more of a suffix that I lack something. I lack a particular information that would help me determine the halacha. Suffix, so the Shach says in Lamedalet that if it's machmas chisor and yediyah, it's not a suffix. So we have to explain this, because it all depends if it's to him or to the whole world. Nobody knows. It's an unknown. There's a behemoth called a koi. You may have seen it in the Mishnah. Nobody knows if it's a behemoth or a chaya. Have you heard of that? Whether that's the correct pronunciation, I'm not 100% sure. Koi.
That's right.
Some put the vowels kvi. Anyway, that's also suffix. How do you pronounce it? It's a suffix behemoth, suffix chaya. What difference is it? It's a kosher. Well, it's a big difference. What's the difference? If it's a chaya, I need kisui adam. The mitzvah of kisui, right? Just like with birds. Birds and chayas, they kisui adam. If it's a chaya, I can have the chaylev, I can eat the chaylev. There's no prohibition on the chaylev, on a chaya, only on a behemoth, like a goat, a sheep, and a cow. If it's a chai, I can't bring it on the mizbeach, right? There's quite several nafkaminas. So, it's a suffix. And because it's a suffix, we have to be machmir wherever there is need to be machmir on. Okay. So, there are various situations like this that even the chachamim were mesupek. There's another suffix in the Gemara about what the final halacha is after the whole discussion is said and done. And what's the last word after the discussion when there's no resolution? Teiku. What do we do with the teiku? What's the mechaber going to do? He has to write down the halacha. Who is the halacha like? Right? That's another kind of suffix. It's also machmas chisorin yediyah, but this one is more like, who's the halacha like? It's not a suffix again in the Metzias, and I'm going to give you an example of that. It's something, which halacha do we follow? So if it's a suffix machmas chisorin yediyah in general, I don't know myself. The Mordechai brings down, this is where the halacha is taken from, that if one is not able to, he's talking about the case in Tzadik Ches, when one is not able to figure out if there was shishim or not, Keneged the Isser, tough luck. That's not called a suffix. Oh, maybe there was, but I'm not sure. I can't figure out. I don't know how to. That's not a suffix. He calls it something like shoitim. The fools. Just because a guy is ignorant, he doesn't know how to figure out something out. To him, that's a suffix. That's not a suffix. That's machmas chisorin yediyah, but that's not called a suffix. The Rashba brings, legabe this din if there's shishim or not. There was one scenario where we said it was okay. When was that? In Nishbach. Remember? It fell, it poured, it spilled. There was roy, but we don't know if there was shishim or not. That was an acceptable suffix, because it's not my fault. It's Nishbach. Right? I had a pot with Isser falling in. Oh, okay. Let's figure out if there is no. Oh, all of a sudden it poured out, it all spilled out. I know I had roiv, Baruch Hashem. Right? But I don't know if I have shishim. So that's a suffix d'Rabbanan. Because the Rabbanan are the ones that require the shishim here. I have roiv, so I'm safe. So that's a valid kind of a suffix. So the Rashba discussing that kind of a suffix, even though he discusses a different area, he learns the halacha of suffix chisorin yediyah from Kachal. Kachal was a very unique area of halacha in speaking about the udder, U-D-D-E-R, the udder of the cow. You have to know how to make it. And you better know how to make it, because otherwise it's like Basar b'chalav. You're tasting milk and meat together. So you have to know how to prepare it. So over there's a problem. There can arise a problem, depending on how it was cooked, with what it was cooked, in how to figure out shishim. We don't know how much milk it emits. And therefore, the chumrah over there, it's a chumrah, is to calculate keneged kol hakchal, -1. Right? To calculate against the whole thing. Why? Because we don't know how much milk comes out. We don't know how much to calculate. So that's a suffix, machmas chisorin yediyah. But over there we're being machmir. You see, it doesn't help us that we don't know. The Rashba says. In that case that we don't know, okay, so figure out against the whole thing. You don't know how much milk it has. Right? Imagine a spoon, fleshik and milachix. You don't know how much it swallowed, how much it absorbed. It's great. You figure out against the whole spoon, the whole pot, whatever it is that you're dealing with. When we don't know, you figure against the whole thing. Now, so therefore, according to that, Chisor Machmas, Safek Machmas Chisor Yediyah will not help you. But the Ran, who gives another explanation, by the way, of why we're Machmir by Chal, it's a different explanation of why the Chachamim wanted to be Machmir Dafka by Chal. He says that if it happens by chance that something spilled, that even though it's Machmas Chisor Yediyah, that would be allowed. So according to the Ran, you would allow machmas chisorin yediyah in that kind of a scenario where it's spilled. Yeah, and we have various examples. I think it's in Siman Nun Gimel and Nun Hey, which is in Hilchos Treifas, that if we don't know, it's not a suffix. Yeah, all kinds of examples by a chicken, including the famous example that we discussed about if the wing was broken, and by the way, a different kind of scenario, if the wing was nishmat, it was dislocated. Broken versus dislocated makes a difference. Where we were makel by nishbera, broken, by nishmatu, it may not be such a simple matter if it was dislocated. Remember, we're concerned about the lung. All right. That's in general the klal of Safek Machmas Chisaron Yediyah. But if it's a Safek Machmas Chisaron Yediyah lekola olam kulo, that nobody knows what the halacha is, nobody knows how to resolve it. It's not just him by himself; he has a personal problem. That's a machlekes hapoiskim, if it's called a Safek or not. The Taz calls this a regular Safek. If everybody has a Safek, then it's not his fault. If it's a suffix to everybody, it qualifies as a good suffix. Therefore, you can use it in conjunction with another suffix to make it a Sfeka. And he has a very good example. He brings a raya from Toysa's cheese. Cheese that was made from a cow, and we found out later on that this cow, when we slaughtered it, has sirchas. Ligaments that may render this animal treif. And we know the famous halacha that anything that comes out from a treif animal is no good. So if you know for a fact that this animal is treif and you've had chicken from it, eggs, you've had milk from it, no, you can't. Unless you have, remember, Sfekas. But when you know for sure that this animal is treif, and by the way, this question has come up in today's times about the injections that give the cow, that they may make it a treif, and the cow may become treif. All kinds of things that they do to cows that may render this cow treif. Forget about the milk right now. Just the animal itself may be treif.
Injection does.
Yeah, well, obviously, what they inject, a hole, yeah. What they do, they sometimes stick to release the gas. Some of them are bloated of releasing the gas by sticking something, not an injection. But there are various, I don't recall all of the examples, but there are various problems that have arisen as a result of things that are done to animals while they're still alive that may render the animal a treif. If we render the animal a treif, that means what you're milking from it is no good. And you may have milk out there coming out from a treif animal. You can't have it. You can't drink it. Right? So this is a very good example. So the Taz brings the Tosfos, the example in Chulin, where the animal that was slaughtered has sirchas. We found a sircha. So what's the problem? Maybe the milk came out while the animal was treif, right? So what's the halacha? It's mutter, because we have a sfeka, Toysa says. What's the sfeka? Maybe the sirchas came after the milk was milked. A sircha was developed later, right? And even if you want to say that the sircha was there all along from the beginning, there are quite a few types of sirchas. Some of those sirchas are perfectly okay. You are able to determine if those sirchas are okay or not by simply taking out the lungs, blowing them in the water, right? The poishim, as it says. The ficha, you blow it, and you're able to determine if there's any problems now. Well, good. So even if you want to say that the sirchas were there all along, maybe it's one of those sirchas that does not render necessarily the animal as treif. Elamai, we are machmir. We are machmir with certain sirchas, especially if you want glad bet Yosef, that you're not going to allow any, as they call it, rirale. Rir is a small one. There's some that they just, if they pass the hand, it comes off easily. It's still glad, but it's not bet Yosef. And it all depends. So anyway, we're machmir. We're machmir by sirchas. Certain sirchas for sure. So just because we're machmir doesn't mean that it's treif. It could be that this is a sircha that is a kosher sircha. So you see, you have a good sfek. This is Toises. So the Taz says, you see, based on that, even though it's a chisoron, machmas idea, for everyone, it's only because of a chumrah there, in that particular case, and we're matter. So he says it's mutter. That's, by the way, that's the halacha in the Shulchan Aruch too, in Siman Pei Aleph, when he speaks about milk coming out from a Safek Treifa. Very interesting. Pei Aleph discusses things that can vorim ayutzi min achai. So there he speaks about gvinos shenasu mecholav behemo v'nimtza treifa. That's exactly the same halacha. So it all depends, of course, what kind of a treifa it is. The exact same halacha. So what do we do lemaisa? The Pri Megadim says you can be made of the hefsed meruba. Since there are some who don't allow suffix machmas chisorin idea, even though it's a suffix for the whole world, since there are some who do allow it, the hefsed meruba, you can be lenient. All right. Once we know the halacha of suffix chisorin idea, what happens if it's a suffix chisorin idea shene'evad? In addition to the suffix of chisorin idea, it was lost. If it was lost, that means we have an additional advantage, and now we're not able to figure it out now. Does it make things better or worse? So again, if we're talking about an individual that he doesn't know, he may not know, but somebody else may know, then that's a good suffix. That's perfectly fine suffix. In other words, it's just that he doesn't know, but somebody else may be able to know. And now it got lost. That's our example of, similar to the example of Nishpach. Now it's not possible, but it could have been known. Even though he may not have known, somebody else could have known. But now that it's Nishpach, it's okay. But if it's a Safek Yediyah Lechola Olam Kulo, that Rabbi Kiva Eger brings down that it doesn't make a difference if Nishpach. Once you say it's a Safek Lechola Olam Kulo, you're not in any way, you don't benefit from this, that it's Nishpach now. It remains a Safek Yediyah Lechola Olam Kulo, and you don't gain anything. Because in other words, it has already been, we have already established that we need to be machmir before it was nishmach, before it was nevad, before it was lost. So you don't gain anything here that it's lost. So if the question now, let's go to the next case that we began to explain before. If it's not a suffix in the Niddah, what the halacha is? Nobody knows. People do know, people don't know. It's a suffix in the Metzias. I'm sorry, the other way around. If it's not a suffix in the Metzias as to what exactly happened, whether the wing broke, that's Metzias, right? Whether there was Shishim or not. It's a suffix only in the din. What is the din? We have a suffix. This Poisik says this way, this Poisik says this way, the Shach says like this, the Tas says like that. What is it? So the Pri Chodesh brings down, and there are others who agree with him, that if the suffix is from the Gemara's time, at the Gemara level, if that's what the suffix is, and there was no achro, there was no conclusion, and Kol Shekeni, the Rishonim themselves also have a question about what the halacha is. We don't say Sfeka, neither do we say suffix or Rabbanan Lekula. In other words, you can't add that suffix to an additional suffix. Suffix, if the halacha is like the one who's machmir or the one that's mekel, and even if the halacha is like the one that's machmir, right? We have this additional suffix right in the Metzia. What happened? You can't add that suffix. That doesn't count. A suffix as to what the din is, what the halacha is, cannot be included, right, or considered in making a Sfeka. And we spoke a little bit about this from a different angle, that the whole idea of Sfeka is that one has to make the other one stronger. In other words, one suffix, even though if this suffix is weakened somehow, it comes along the other suffix and balances it out, restores the balance, strengthens your case. If you have a suffix in the din, you don't really have a real suffix, because the halacha is very possibly like the one who's machmir. So you have to isolate it, and as we've had various other cases, say, possibly this is the halacha. And once you said this is the halacha, you can't move on, because if it's asr, it's asr.
Then why did you make the distinction between suffix in the din? By technology or whatever.
Yeah.
Or even from.
Well, because in our time it's kol shekin, so the more so.
Okay. All right.
That's all I'm saying. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now,
You're right. You know, if the suffix is back then, I can't say who's right and who's wrong. The more so today, why say this one more than that one? You know, it reminds me, remember we spoke about Sfeka Shemishapech. Why start from this one? You can just as well start from this one. And if you don't get similar results, it won't work. Sfeka has to be Mishapech. You have to be able to begin with either suffix and get the same results. You may have a situation where it's like a chazaka, or like a determination has been made. The halacha is like this, possibly. It's usher. You can't go on. In other words, you won't be able to go to the next step if you determine that it's possibly the halacha is like this. Just that we don't have the means to determine which halacha we follow. So it can't help you. It can't help you in being able to establish if something is mutter or not. It's a completely a suffix that is not really related mitzias, in a sense. It's almost as if we had like the other case of a suffix beguf and suffix batarubas. This may be treif, it may be kosher. Hey, and now I have a second suffix. It got mixed into tarubas. Which one is it? Doesn't count. This is a suffix beguf, this is a suffix betaruvas. It won't qualify necessarily as a sfeka. Some say, Rabbeinu Tam would say yes. But we don't, we're machmer on that. It doesn't count as a sfeka. You can't make it into a sfeka. Yeah. So in other words, what do we see so far? I mean, it's not so simple. You can't just throw any sfeka. It's not about multiple sfekas just. It has to really have a koach here that the chances are better than not that this is mutter because of similar patterns or similar reasons. Anyway, the Beis Yosef brings down halacha l'maaseh that if in the Gemara it says teiku and there's a suffix, it's a good suffix, and that's the halacha. The Pri Megadim brings it down that we do in the case of teiku in the Gemara only. It does not mean this is the halacha legabe any suffix machmas chisorin yediyah. But if there's a real teiku, that would constitute as a suffix. Suffix because it's a teiku. Why? Because that in itself is, if you had that by itself, it would be a suffix d'Rabbanan, right? I mean, that's a suffix, in a sense. It doesn't. You have all kinds of sfekas. The only question that we had is, can we combine that with the other suffix? That was the question. So the Beis Yosef says that if it's a teiku in the Gemara, and it's not a chisoron yedi in general, that we don't know, just that we have a teiku. The Gemara says it's a suffix. It would be a sfex. It would qualify to be part of a sfeka. All right, last two kalalim. Kalal lamed hey, very interesting one. All right, we have certain doubts. Well, you have a doubt. Look into it. Maybe I can look into it. Maybe if I'm giving the time and the tools, I'll be able to make a determination as to what the Metzias really is. Remember the Ramah told us very recently that by a wing being broken, we had a Sfeka, whether it was before or after the Shechita, and even if you want to say it was before, whoever told you that it perforated the lungs? But the Ramah adds, it's a big chiddush. Guess what? I won't even make you check. Why don't you just check it? No, you don't have to. Sfeka, that's how powerful Sfeka is. That sometimes, and I say sometimes for a reason, even if you could find out, you don't need to. And the reason for that is because the Chachamim were not matriach you. They did not want to impose on you, to bother you, to check it if the chances are good enough that this is fine. Obviously, if it's not, the chances are not so good, then it's like we said before, the other shach's cloud, that it may lean towards the probabilities of it being a problem, then that's not a sfeka. But if it's a real suffix, each one is a suffix, together they're a sfeka, then you don't even have to check. But we will see that this is a little bit not so in every single case. One example, by the way, where we know this from, the Ramah's Meikel, as we said, one way that we know this is from a Beferish Atosis in Avodah Zarah. There's a famous klal that you may have heard of by Goyim. A Goy made you something in his pot. Oh no, it's treif. But what do we have? We have a klal, Stam Kelim Einam Bnei Yoiman. Right? Famous klal by Kelim. Stam Kelim were not used today. So what if they weren't used today? He was used over 24 hours ago. He made shrimp. Well, if it was over 24 hours ago, it's nois and tam gam. It's pogum. It's defective. If it's defective, the food is not aser. You can't use the lechatchila. The food's on. Safek. What's the Sfeka? Why is it mutter? Wait a minute. Why is it mutter? Just because it may have stam kreni meina b'nei yoyim, but it could have been used today. You don't know. Oh, I have a better idea. You don't know? Give it to a kapela. Have a chef. See if he can detect any taste. After tasting in the food, the shrimp or the whatever. No, we don't require you to get a kapela to check it because we have a Sfeka. The person says, what's a Sfeka? And that's what we say, stam kenim in a, because even if you want to say he didn't use it over 24 hours, he used it just a couple hours ago, maybe that food gives it a pgam, or maybe doesn't give it a tam at all. Who's to say that he will give it a good taste? So we have, that's a Sfeka. So you can rely on that in order not to have a kefela tested or check it out. So we see that even though it's efshar levarer, even though you're able to investigate it, you don't always need to. If you have a good Sfeka, which is what we have there by stam kenim, you don't need a kapela.
What if you're going? Did you use the
So these are the kinds of questions that are brought out on this klal. How much is a bother? What if it's no big deal? Then do it. You're right. If it's no big deal, do it. If something is not a big deal, just do it. Yeah, you're right. Halacha l'maisa, that's what we paskin. It all depends how much of a bother is involved. Imagine somebody has a keli. Oh no, I don't know which one. I toivold it, not toivold it. Agolo, no golo. You have tons of kelim. Do we say it's bottle? Or you got to take all the kelim back to the mikveh? It could be a big tircha. We don't require you to do that. This is an important halacha. I mean, this can't happen, And it's a tircha. It's only a tircha, right? It's obviously not a deraisa. It's obviously, depending on the circumstances. Sometimes it could be a deraisa, but if you only have one suffix, you may not be able to get away from it. But if you have a Sfeka, but you can still investigate it, you may be able to just get along with the Sfeka and not have to investigate it. So that's the klal lamed hey. Shach brings down from the Rashba. The Shach brings down that even though the Ramah was mekel, that you don't have to be mevar in the case of the chicken that broke its wing. The Shach brings down from the Rashba that you don't rely on Sfeka that you can be mevarer. That's what he brings down. The Shach brings down from Rash that you should not rely, especially if it's not too difficult. And he holds that you should check it out if you can easily determine it, and only when there's a big hefsed. If there's going to be a hefsed of some sort, you're going to have a loss as a result of checking it out, then you don't have to. So he's relying, of course, on the others who hold that this may be okay. But it comes down to what you said. If it's not too much of a hassle, then maybe you should figure it out. You should be. And this is, by the way, applicable in many areas of halacha. All kinds of situations where you may be able to figure it out. If it's a question about calling somebody and finding out, of course you need to do easily done. Right? You're stuck in Alaska, and what time is the Shia here? Today, Baruch Hashem, we have phones, have computers, you can look up everything. There's a lot of things you can find out easily. And if that's the case, then that's what you should do. The last klal is a very interesting klal. It's not a real klal. It's an important concept. Don't be mechadish new Sfekas on your own. Don't invent things. But on top of that, he says, be careful not to put yourself in that situation intentionally. Remember, we spoke about Emevat and Isur Lechatchila. This is a kind of, there are people who can put themselves in a situation that they can be iffy in. Why do so? I remember a case of a suffix by a beggar if it requires scissor knot. It's half closed, half opened. Okay, put tzitzis on it. The problem is if you go out with this on Shabbos, you're carrying in case he doesn't need tzitzis. Follow me? Don't put yourself in that situation. Don't wear it. Another very good example of this is Sfira Soimer, which is around the corner. When do we count Sfira Soimer? After it's dark. Why? Because before it's dark, it could still be part of yesterday. Halacha, it's brought down. Let me see who brings it down. The Rosh writes it down too. Yeah, that you're allowed to count Sfira Soimer when it's Safek Hashecha. He said, there are some who hold like that you're allowed to count Sfira Soimer when it's a Safek Hashecha. No, it's after Shkia. Why? Because Safek D'Rabbanan L'Kula. Very simple. Because of Safek D'Rabbanan L'Kula, you're allowed to do it. But others have written, why do so? Don't put yourself in that situation, lechatchila, to create a Safek. You see? This is an example. Don't put yourself in that situation. Why do it? Right? Whenever you're able to be yoitz, I tell this to a lot of people when they're choosing dafka to do something one way, which is a big kula. I say, why do that if you can just as easily do it like the majority of people, like the ones who are mach? When you don't really have a tremendous reason to be mekel, why be mekel? For example, davening mincha very, very late. That's the example I like to choose. Even though, of course, we have the sheet of Rabbi Elyahu Kin, the famous machlekes, the grow of Rabbi Elyahu Kin, how to calculate the day. Why don't you just make things simple? Daven mincha according to everybody. When everybody would agree, it's okay. And when you have, as far as Marav, learn. Have a share between mincha and Marav. So they tell you, people are in a hurry, all kinds of tirutzim, right? I think it's I don't know. I don't necessarily. If you can easily resolve the problem by being yoitze all the shitas, if it's possible, then do so. Why rely on this? I've come to places where it was mamish dark, pitch dark, and they were davening mincha. It's a problem. Shalashudas, you can't start Shalashudas late. You have to start before the Shkia. Even half an hour before, if possible, at least before. Once you started, you can continue. I mean, if you start late, who's going to be mater? I mean, obviously, there are all kinds of shitas when it comes to figuring time. How do we figure time in the morning? How do we figure time in the evening? But why put yourself lechatchila in those situations, which is a suffix, if you're doing the right thing or not, right? There's stories that people say that when they're going to come upstairs, they say, I relied on the Bach. Oh, did you? Then why didn't you rely on the Bach on this other case? They're going to get you. Yeah? I relied on him. Yeah, oh, you're right. You relied. Fine. But if you don't need to rely on a lenient opinion, if it's just as easily, can you be yoyse all the sheets, there's no hefsed, you can find out what the halacha is, you can verify the situation by being mevara, then do so. And that's how we hold. That's how we hold that in this last case, in this last klal, that you don't put yourself necessarily, if possible, in any situation to create a sfeka. You don't want, even though sfeka is going to work beautifully in many situations, but that's because a situation arose that we have a question now as to what to do. But to put yourself lechatchila and say, well, there's a something like this, or something like this, you can't have the K82. You're going to go like Beis Hillel, you're going to go like Beis Hillel always, with the kulas and the chumas. You're going to go like Beis Shammai, you're going to go like Beis Shammai all the way. You can't have the kulas of each one, right? You don't want to have the chumas either of each. You want to go with one, right? And to be machmer, as I said before, is also not something that you always want to do. There are situations that need input. In other words, what do we do when we're dealing with a tremendous loss, a tremendous tircha, or a question of shalom bayis even? With Niddah and all that, it's not a simple matter. You have to be extremely careful. Kashrus should not be taken so lightly. We're talking about the neshama. Neshama absorbing food that is questionable. It's okay. After all, it's only orange. After all, it's only beans. But do you know what machine? Maybe those same machines, they do other things. Somebody just showed me sour cream. Sour cream? Usually that particular brand has a hashgacha. And this one also had a hashgacha. It had a cade. But somebody pointed out it has gelatin. It said that it was less than 1%. So what do you say, Ilan? Would you eat it? It said less than 1%, so is it bottle? No, it's not a chaticha real iskabed. It is bottle. And that's why probably the Mashgiach put a shishgach there, whoever he is. We don't eat these things, even if they're bottle. When it's glaring at you, this is gelatin. Tarfus. Yeah, but wait a minute. I heard there's a psak. The gelatin is like bones. It's like nothing. Yeah, but remember Dover Amamid? Gelatin depends on what the function of gelatin is here, even though it may not be cheese. I don't know. It's not so simple. But there are those who want to rely. Why do you want to rely when you have other sour creams that are 100% kosher? But if it's medication, and there are no alternatives, and even though it's Pesach, it's a kidneys question, but it's only kidneys. And if it's chometz, but it's not really achilas kelem. But there's nothing else to do, there's nothing else to take. That's different. Then I can rely on all kinds of sheets and all kinds of halachas. But lechatchila, to put yourself in a situation where you want to rely just to be reliant, you don't do that. Depending, of course, on how difficult it is and what the circumstances are. Okay, I think that does it for the Hilchos of Sfeka. Mr. Shem will continue next time with Siman Kuf Yud Aleph.